My parents called me pathetic for working 2 low-end jobs. "You'll never be anything," they said, so I smiled and quietly left. A month later they were speechless when people talk about rock bottom like it's this loud, dramatic moment. You lose your job, you lose your house, you lose yourself. But for me, it was quieter. It was a Tuesday night, a half-eaten takeout dinner getting cold on the kitchen table, my parents' voices slicing through the air sharper than any knife could. "You'll never be anything, Kyle," my father said, his words cool and final like he was pronouncing a sentence, not an opinion. "You're pathetic," my mother chimed in, not even bothering to look up from her crossword puzzle. I just stood there, exhausted from a 14-hour day split between 2 soul-crushing jobs, one flipping burgers, the other stacking pallets overnight, and I realized something. They didn't see the struggle. They didn't see the sacrifices. They only saw failure. And maybe in that moment I saw it too. I had moved back home after things got tight. It wasn't supposed to be forever. Just long enough to breathe. To catch up. But every day back under that roof felt like I was shrinking smaller and smaller, as if the walls themselves were trying to squeeze the ambition out of me. At first, it was little comments. "Maybe you should have tried harder in school. Should have found a real job by now." But that night, those words, they weren't just digs. They were a full-blown declaration. I looked at them both, feeling something inside me quietly snap, not loud enough for anyone else to notice, but enough that I knew. There would be no shouting. No fighting. I simply smiled, the calmest I had ever been. Turned. Walked to my room. And started packing my life back into a few battered suitcases. This time, I wasn't just leaving the house. I was leaving them behind. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't owe them that much. I crammed my life into 2 suitcases, an old backpack, and a cracked laptop, the same one I'd been secretly building a freelance profile on, late at night when I should have been sleeping. I moved as quietly as I could, but honestly, they barely noticed. My dad was back to watching some late-night sports recap, my mom still filling in little black squares with her mechanical pencil. I stood for a moment in the hallway, gripping the frayed strap of my bag, just watching them. Wondering how it ever got this bad. I didn't wait for a word from them, not even a glance. I stepped outside into the cold night air and pulled the door shut behind me. It didn't feel like freedom yet. It felt like floating, untethered, uncertain. No plan. No backup. Just a $30 balance in my checking account, a busted old Honda Civic, and a stubborn part of me that refused to die. I crashed on a friend's couch that first night, Ben, an old buddy from high school who didn't ask questions. He just tossed me a blanket and said, "Stay as long as you need, man." I lay there that night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every cruel word they had said. Pathetic. Failure. You'll never be anything. Over and over, like a broken record. And somewhere between midnight and sunrise I made a decision. I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to win. Not for them. Not to prove them wrong. For me. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Ben's coffee maker sputtering like an old engine. I hadn't really slept. My mind had been spinning too fast, building and rebuilding plans I wasn't even sure how to start. I shuffled into the kitchen, still wearing yesterday's clothes, and Ben handed me a chipped mug without a word. He didn't need to say anything. The look in his eyes said it all. "I'd been there too, brother." After a few sips of bitter coffee, I pulled out my laptop. The screen had a spiderweb crack running through the corner, but it still worked. I logged on to the freelance site I'd been quietly messing around with for months. Profiles, proposals, unpaid sample pieces I'd sent into the void, hoping someone would notice. And they had. A little. Not much. A few tiny gigs here and there. A blog post for $20. A flyer designed for a local landscaping company. I'd always treated it like a hobby. But now it had to be my lifeline. I spent the next 12 hours glued to that screen. I didn't eat. I didn't move except to refill my coffee. I rewrote my profile, polished every word, uploaded new samples, even though they were scraps of old projects. I applied to everything I remotely qualified for, ghostwriting gigs, ad copywriting, content editing, product descriptions for socks, hotel brochures, video scriptwriting for people selling dog shampoo. It didn't matter. If it paid even a little, I was in. Hours turned into days. My first breakthrough came 2 days later. A company needed someone to write blog articles about DIY home repairs. Funny enough, all that time fixing stuff around the house for my parents suddenly paid off. I wrote them a sample that night, pouring every ounce of myself into it. Desperate but determined. The next morning, I woke up to a simple message. We'd like to bring you on. $80 per article to start. 5 articles a week. Are you interested? I stared at it, barely breathing. $80 an article. 5 articles a week. $400. It wasn't a fortune. But it was something. I slammed my hand down on Ben's kitchen table so hard the coffee mug jumped. Yes. I shouted at my laptop, half laughing, half ready to cry. Ben walked in, blinking blearily. Dude, you good? I just grinned like a man. Better than good. He clapped me on the back. Told you. You just needed the right door to open. But I wasn't done. Not even close. That first small gig? It gave me enough breathing room to work harder. I spent every free second pitching more clients, sending cold emails, joining freelance groups, learning SEO writing, marketing myself. I pulled all-nighters fueled by instant ramen and ambition. And slowly, the dominoes started to fall. Another client. Then 2 more. Then a contract with a tech startup that needed 30 articles a month. By the end of the first month, I wasn't scraping by anymore. I had made nearly $4,800. In 30 days, I made more money freelancing in my pajamas than I ever had working 2 brutal jobs, barely sleeping, barely breathing. And for the first time in my life, I didn't owe it to anyone. Not my parents. Not some boss who didn't know my name. Just me. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something. Brick by brick. And it was almost time to show them exactly what they'd thrown away. A month after I walked out of that house with nothing but a few bags and a broken heart, I stood in front of a mirror I didn't recognize anymore. The cheap clothes, the hollow eyes, the slumped shoulders, they were gone. In their place was someone sharper. Stronger. Someone I almost didn't recognize, and didn't want to lose again. The money wasn't the most important part, though don't get me wrong, it felt good seeing my bank balance climb instead of gasp for air. No, the real shift was inside. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I was winning. Quietly, steadily, without anyone's permission. I got a real apartment, nothing flashy, but it was mine. Paid 3 months' rent up front. Bought a decent used car, something that wouldn't break down every other week. I even upgraded my battered laptop to something newer, faster, an investment in the business that had saved me. Every night before I crashed into bed, I'd stare at my computer screen and whisper to myself, "You are not pathetic. You were never pathetic." And little by little, I started believing it. Still, there was one thing left unfinished. One thing burning in the back of my mind like an ember that wouldn't die out. They needed to see it. Not for their approval. Not for their apology. For me. They needed to see what happened when the person they called pathetic didn't just survive, but rose higher than they ever dreamed. And so I started planning. I wasn't going to show up angry. No yelling, no drama. Just calm, undeniable proof. I waited until a Sunday afternoon, the same day of the week they'd always hosted their little family updates, where they loved to parade around Mike's new promotion or Emily's scholarship trophies, pretending I didn't exist. I called ahead, polite as could be. "Hey, Mom." "Hey, Dad." "Thought I'd stop by. Catch up." There was a pause on the line, a moment of hesitation so small I almost missed it. Then came my mother's voice, a little too sweet. "Well, it's about time." I hung up, smiled to myself, and got ready. Button-down shirt. Slacks. The clean, professional look of someone who didn't have to explain himself anymore. I pulled into their driveway right on time. And when I walked through the door, carrying nothing but a calm smile and my own hard-won dignity, I knew something they didn't. This time, I wasn't here to stay. This time, I was here to say goodbye, properly. The living room looked exactly the same as when I left. Same faded beige carpet. Same sun-bleached family photos on the mantel, pictures of Mike's baseball trophies, Emily's graduation, smiling vacations where I had always been just out of frame, if I was invited at all. And of course, there they were. Mom perched on the edge of the couch like a queen on her throne, her smile tight and plastic. Dad slumped in his recliner, remote in hand, giving me a nod like I was some door-to-door salesman he was tolerating for a few minutes. I stood there for a beat, letting the silence stretch. Feeling the weight of everything that had led me to this moment. "Wow," Mom said finally, looking me up and down. "You look different." "Yeah," Dad added, adjusting his glasses. "Guess working at the burger joint wasn't such a dead end after all, huh?" I smiled. That same calm smile I had worn the night I walked out of their lives. "No," I said softly. "It wasn't. Because I'm not there anymore." They exchanged a look, confused, skeptical. Waiting for the punchline. I set my bag down on the coffee table and pulled out a folder. Simple. Clean. Professional. I opened it and started laying out the proof, pay stubs, client contracts, screenshots of invoices paid in full. Articles with my byline. Even a printout of a glowing recommendation letter from a major tech company I'd started consulting for. I didn't say anything. I just let the papers speak first. My mother's fake smile slowly faded. My father leaned forward, squinting at the documents like they were written in another language. Finally, I spoke. "In the last month," I said evenly, "I built my own business. I make more in a week now than I used to make in 2 months working those jobs you loved mocking me for." I let that sink in. I paid off my car. I got my own place. And next month, I'm doubling my rates. Their mouths opened but no sound came out. I could see it, the slow, dawning realization. They hadn't crushed me. They had forged me. "I did it without your help," I continued, voice steady, almost gentle. "Without your encouragement. Without your support." I leaned in slightly, meeting their stunned gazes. "And I did it because of every word you threw at me. Every time you called me pathetic. Every time you laughed at me." Mom looked like she wanted to speak, but she couldn't find the words. Dad just sat there slack-jawed. "Good." I stood up, gathering my things. "Just thought you should know," I said, slinging the bag over my shoulder. "In case you ever wonder why you don't hear from me again." Their faces twisted, into anger, confusion, regret. It didn't matter. Because I wasn't staying to hear their excuses. Not this time. I gave them one last polite smile. And then, without another glance, I turned and walked out the front door. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was leaving home. I felt like I was finally stepping into it. I didn't look back. Not once. I walked down that cracked old driveway, past the dying rose bushes and the rusted mailbox with our family name half faded from the sun. I opened my car door, slid behind the wheel, and just sat there for a second. Breathing. Feeling the weight of everything lift off me like a heavy winter coat I didn't even realize I'd been carrying for years. It hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just about proving them wrong. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about the money, though that part felt undeniably sweet. It was about finally understanding that their love, what little of it there had been, had always come with conditions. Be who we want you to be, or you're nothing. For years I twisted myself into knots trying to earn something that was never truly offered. Approval. Pride. Belonging. And the brutal, honest truth was this. I was never going to get it. Not because I hadn't worked hard enough. Not because I wasn't good enough. But because some people will only ever see you through the cracked lens of their own disappointments. Their own fears. Their own failures. And once I realized that, I didn't need it anymore. I didn't need them anymore. I started the engine and pulled out of the driveway without hesitation, the tires crunching over gravel, the house shrinking in the rearview mirror until it was nothing more than a speck on the horizon. It was over. Really over. And in the emptiness they left behind, I felt something bloom inside me. Freedom. Not the kind you shout about. Not the kind that demands to be seen. The kind you feel deep in your bones. Quiet. Solid. Unbreakable. I wasn't running anymore. I was flying. The days that followed felt almost unreal. Every morning, I woke up in my small, sunlit apartment, the one I paid for entirely on my own, and for a few seconds, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, soaking it all in. No shouting down the hall. No heavy footsteps stomping past my door. No sarcastic comments over breakfast about how I needed to get my act together. Just silence. And peace. And possibility. I dove even harder into my freelance work, but now it wasn't about survival anymore. It was about building something. Something real. Something permanent. Every day, new opportunities trickled in. A startup founder wanted me to consult on their website copy. A marketing agency needed a full-time freelance writer on retainer. An editor from a major online magazine reached out after seeing my articles and offered me a regular column. I said yes to everything I could handle. Some weeks I barely slept, but it didn't feel like the exhaustion I used to know, the kind that crushed your spirit and made you dread tomorrow. This exhaustion was different. It was purposeful. Every late night, every early morning, every caffeine-fueled writing sprint was a brick in the foundation of a new life. My life. Ben, the friend who let me crash at his place that first desperate night, kept checking in. "Dude," he said one afternoon as we grabbed cheap burgers after a meeting. "You're killing it. When are you gonna slow down?" I smiled at him, feeling a warmth I hadn't felt in a long, long time. "I'm not killing it yet," I said. "But I will." And deep down I knew it. I wasn't just scraping by anymore. I wasn't the pathetic kid with 2 dead-end jobs anymore. I was becoming someone I could finally be proud of. Someone independent. Someone resilient. Someone free. And somewhere out there, my parents were probably still sitting in that same worn-out living room, wondering where everything went wrong. I didn't care. Their world had stayed the same. But mine was just getting started. It had been almost 2 months since I last heard their voices. 2 months since I walked out of their lives without looking back. I thought that was the end of it. I thought they'd leave me alone, nursing their pride in that crumbling little house they clung to so tightly. But the past has a funny way of trying to crawl back when it realizes it's been left behind. It started with a voicemail. I didn't recognize the number, probably a burner phone, knowing them, but the voice was unmistakable. "Hey Kyle, it's Mom. We were just thinking about you. Wondering how you've been. Maybe you could come by sometime. You know, talk things over. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just talk things over." Like they hadn't gutted me with their words. Like they hadn't sat there and laughed while I fought every single day just to survive under their roof. I stared at the phone for a long time after the message ended. Part of me felt the old instinct, the desperate urge to fix things, to smooth it over, to pretend everything could go back to normal, if I just tried hard enough. But another part of me, the stronger part, knew better now. I didn't owe them closure. I didn't owe them my time. I didn't owe them me. I deleted the voicemail without even flinching. The next day, another message came through. This time from my father. Short, gruff, almost like a command. "It's been long enough. Family sticks together, Kyle. Time to come home." Home. The word tasted like rust in my mouth. I typed out a reply, my fingers steady, my heart calm. "I am home. Thanks for the reminder." And then I blocked the number. That was the last time I ever heard from them. They wanted me back, on their terms. But I had finally built a life on mine. And I wasn't trading it for anything. Weeks passed. The further away I got from them, the clearer everything became. I realized that for most of my life, I had been chasing something that didn't even exist. Some version of family that was never real outside of my own hopes. They had built their approval on conditions. Their love was a transaction, one I could never pay enough for. And once I stopped buying in, the entire illusion collapsed. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. I wasn't carrying the weight of their words, their judgments, their cold stares. I had outgrown it all. Some nights, I'd sit on my small apartment balcony, a mug of coffee in hand, staring at the city lights flickering against the dark sky, and just breathe. No pressure. No shame. No noise. Just the steady, quiet satisfaction of knowing that I had chosen myself, and that it was the best decision I had ever made. Freedom wasn't loud like I thought it would be. It was soft. Steady. Unshakable. If I could go back and tell the version of myself who stood in that kitchen, hearing the words pathetic and failure echo around him, I'd only say one thing. You're not broken. You're just not in the right place yet. It took losing everything, the roof, the safety net, even the people I once called family, to finally find out what I was capable of. It wasn't easy. There were nights when the fear nearly won. Mornings where exhaustion made me want to quit. But every time I thought about giving up, I remembered that smile, the one I gave them as I packed my life into bags and walked out the door. The smile that said, "You'll see." And I did. I didn't just survive. I built a life better than anything they ever imagined for me. A life that didn't ask for permission. A life that didn't need anyone's approval to feel whole.